Welcome to Henry Lake, a quiet, beautiful cottage haven tucked in among the hills of the Caledonia Highlands. It's a place neither of us had heard of until we followed the old St. Martin's and Upham Railway to its shores. The faint line of the tracks shows up in this early photo of the lake, part of the Provincial Archives collection, seen here enhanced and colorized. It reveals the lake once had its own rail siding, serving a sawmill across the water. In those days, cottages were few and far between. The rowboats were most likely used by the mill workers. These historical maps show the early landowners around the lake, among them John Henry and William Henry. William's son, Wellington, would later be a lifelong railroader, much of his career spent as an engineer piloting trains along this very line, skirting the lake named for his family. This is where we'll begin the final leg of our trip at this peaceful lakeside haven more than 500 feet above sea level. Finally on the road, and Scott has lunch all figured out.
Chicken tacos with lime and peach mango salsa.
Wow.
Oh my god. It's heaven. Lemon. Got some tomatoes. You know what I didn't bring? Am I ever some stupid?
So we're turning around here because...
logistics.
Okay, logistics.
Menu problem.
It basically means, if I can translate for you, Scott forgot the cheese when he wanted to make his tacos. Okay, Scott makes a habit of forgetting the cheese for his cooking, and there are basically no Scott dishes that don't involve cheese. So
yeah, well, you can't have tacos without cheese. I feel so stupid.
We turned the rig around, and we are on our way back to St. Martin's to find a cheesemonger. That's back there.
The local cheesemonger. Take us.
The bike's standing for the moment.
It's 10 minutes. I don't. Oh man.
So what do you got?
Cheese, man. Cheese, man. Park out of the sun. Unloading the bikes, 42 degrees Fahrenheit out here in the woods.
We load the bikes now with everything we'll need to cook a meal along the edge of the old rail bed.
There, baby. Look at that singing tight.
We set out on the town plot road. An opening in the trees has drawn us away from the road. Oh, this looks great. To a beautiful elevated pathway leading deep into the woods. Definitely straight. Stream. I'm alongside a stream now. There's a stream on the other side too. Both flowing in this direction. We're coming up to a meeting spot. Fire. Very cool. We've reached a former bridge site. Moss-covered stones still standing on either side of Hotsford Brook, where it meets the Mosier River.
Oh, I love that sound out in the woods. This has been marinating in some vinegar, some lemon juice, some garlic, and chili and cumin. Salt and pepper, and it's been there for about 3 or 4 hours now. Gotta do some chopping of tomatoes and onion and avocado. And then we can get cooking.
Scott wastes no time. Even here, everything's fresh, chopped on site just before cooking.
An important thing about this, just so you guys know, you gotta squeeze lemon on that or it'll turn brown. That's why I brought the lemon. Put that on there. I'm gonna start frying the tortillas.
Okay.
Okay, and when a tortilla comes out, it's perfect. It's perfect. Okay, so
you got to load it up
then
fast.
I load it up, and then I pass to you, and we're running short on napkins, so.
The tortillas are fried one at a time, 10 to 15 seconds per side, then filled and served before the next one hits the pan.
Chicken, avocado, all important green red onions, some tomatoes, another shot of salsa.
Fine by me. You'll want to dive into these right away. This is phenomenal. This is so there's so much texture in here with the onions and tomatoes and the avocado. After lunch, we make a surprise discovery. Another, much larger bridge site, this one crossing the Mosier River barely 100 meters further along the rail bed. So you can see those posts on the other end.
Yeah.
The gap here is huge. The bank on the northwest side where we're standing long ago collapsed into the brook. But our search for an easy way to reach the woods and any remainder of the trail on the opposite bank did not go well. Just felt a couple of raindrops there. So May explained the strange decision to veer off in the wrong direction when a smooth and level trail opened up before us. Perfect for bikes. Almost too good to be true. It doesn't veer left, doesn't veer right. No potholes. It's a really strange thing. The problem? The St. Martin's and Upham Railway doesn't have many straight lines. We stopped to check out a small bridge that doesn't look like a relic from the railway.
It is only built out of wood and it's starting to deteriorate quite badly. I love the way they built it, yeah. Two by sixes on edge.
It's dawning on us. We're in the wrong place. We've wandered onto what looks like a maintenance trail running straight toward the Bay of Fundy, nearly 5 kilometers off our course. Still, it's an opportunity to take a spectacular ride along the shoreline at West Quaco. So let's back up and find the real railway route. Now this is more like it. A high embankment running directly along the Mosier Brook, this time on the east bank of the river. Just a tangle in here. So this is the old railway trail right here. And you really have to be looking for it if you want to find it. This is the route we should have been on. A hopeless and tiring tangle of trees, shrubs, and deadfall with no possibility of bike travel. It's been 85 years since the rail line was abandoned to nature. By that point, Wellington Henry was a well-established CN rail engineer who'd already moved to other lines, chiefly the busy run between Moncton and St. John, often at the controls of steam locomotive 5270, now on display in Moncton's Centennial Park. Henry is remembered as a cheerful man with a sense of humor who loved to tease. He was also generous, helping out friends and St. Martin's neighbors. He knew his Bible, and there was no card playing on Sundays. He was still proudly wearing his engineer's cap in this photo taken in the early 1960s at the age of 79, long after he retired.
So this is what we call the first bridge because it's the first one out of when you come out of St. Martin's.
We were fortunate to have Ed LeBlanc to get us back on track with our search. Ed knows the rail route near his longtime home intimately. The builders crisscrossed Mosier Brook several times on their way to St. Martin's, leaving plenty of evidence behind. The raised bed, concrete bridge abutments, even the faint remains of an old water tower.
It's been pretty well collapsed. You can see one of the bolts in there on it.
From the highway, it's all hidden beneath mature forest. But Ed and his neighbors have kept the old right-of-way open, at least for walking. West of his land, the route clings to red sandstone cliffs.
Quite old.
For over a century, generations of young people have carved their initials into the soft stone. Our final stop with Ed is a concrete culvert dated 1928, a replacement for the original stone one, still doing its job nearly 100 years later. In a short walk with Ed LeBlanc, we found 2 former bridge sites, a perfectly preserved culvert, and the faint remains of a wooden water tower. But the final stretch of the rail trail is the toughest one yet. This Quaco Museum map shows a pretty straightforward route into the village of St. Martin's. But this is how the same area looks today. South of Route 111, almost to the Fundy shore, the traces vanish completely. We're close, but are we on it? It's hard to say. Once again, we need help, and we find it in lifelong St. Martin's resident Don Miller. He leads us back into the woods. We're searching for the site of the railway's engine house and turntable, key infrastructure in its day. The turntable allowed locomotives to reverse direction for the return trip to Hampton. There's one grainy photo of the structure with a locomotive on it. But the family of Wellington Henry has a second photo. It shows Henry with his daughter Olga standing on it in the 1940s. This should be an easy find, but it's not. Eventually, with Don's help, signs of what was once a rail yard begin to appear. Strange metal objects peeking through the moss, lumps of coal. And best of all, the remains of a low crescent-shaped wall. And we've got bricks. We've got pieces of granite. There's one over there, chunks of granite. And that could have been the wall for the turntable, the circular wall that went around it. And those clues. At long last, our journey comes to an end, right here on the St. Martin's waterfront.
It makes sense that because the lumber and everything could be brought just right to the ocean, you know what I mean?
This spot figures largely in the railway's history. The station overlooked the beach. Sidings here were occasionally undermined by stormy seas. One such storm later took out the station building itself. But not all is lost. Steps away from the site of the station stands Old Molly's Pub in what was once the home of the railway's longtime conductor, George Vaughan.
So this is George Vaughan here. You can see here the Hampton and St. Martin's Railroad line name on the side of the train. We have the white picket fences along here in the hill in the background. So we think this picture of all the workers and the conductor was actually just taken right outside our bar here on Beach Street.
The pub also holds an unused passenger ticket from St. Martin's to St. John with a transfer in Hampton. It was found inside a wall here during renovations.
It was back when you'd arrive to the station in horse and carriage, and the women had their parasols and large dresses, and it was a big deal to take the train back then, and it connected those communities, and that's a big part of why we named the bar in its honor.
It all helps preserve the stories of this deeply flawed but fondly remembered railway. Despite its multiple bankruptcies, its winter and spring shutdowns, its legendary slow speeds, and a schedule that was more aspirational than real, it was much loved. And it lives on in our hearts, in song, in stories, in inviting woods pathways, stone and concrete culverts, and in moss-covered bridge sites scattered along 47 kilometers of woods and valley in southern New Brunswick.
Hammond River scenery. Then it left the Hammond, cut across land to St. Martin's by the sea. The very first engine to run the track from Hampton to St. Martin's and back was a 4-4-wheeler with a funnel stack. Old Molly was her name. George Vaughan, conductor, he'd step outside, called stops to the folks who'd ride. His clear, strong voice was George's pride, was his claim to fame. He'd say, all aboard! Now leaving Hampton for Smithtown, Roberts and Salt Springs, Barnesville, Titus Mills, Upham, Tabor Bridge, Hampton Brook, Porter Road, Henry's Lake, St. Martin's. Want to reach Beach Street? Better get started. All aboard! Now across Kings County in the St. John line, that's 30-mile long run, passed over 14 bridges as it met them one by one. From 1880, when the rails were laid, for 17 years it ran as St. Martin's Upham Railway line on its 30-mile long span. Yeah, the very first engine to run the track from Hampton to St. Martin's and back was a 4-4-wheeler with a funnel stack. Old Molly was her name. George Vaughan, conductor, he'd step outside, called stops for the folks who'd ride. His clear, strong voice was George's pride, was his claim to fame. He'd say, all aboard! Now leaving Hampton, Smithtown, Robertson, Salt Springs, Barnesville, Titus Mills, Upham, Tabor Bridge, Hampton Brook, Porter Road, Henry's Lake, St. Martin's. Want to reach Beach Street? Better get started. All aboard! Then the St. Martin's Upham Railway line was about to change its name, so the Hampton and St. Martin's was what it now became. As the H and SM, it still ran for 21 more years. George Vaughan was still conductor, Fred Bradshaw engineer. Yes, the very first engine to run the track from Hampton to St. Martin's and back was a 4-4-wheeler with a funnel stack. Old Molly was her name. George Vaughan, conductor, he'd step outside, call the stops of the folks who'd ride. His clear, strong voice was George's pride, was his claim to fame. He'd say, all aboard! Now leaving Hampton for Smithtown, Robertson, Salt Springs, Barnesville, Titus Mills, Upham, Tabor Bridge, Hampton Brook, Porter Road, Henry's Lake, St. Martin's. Want to reach Beach Street? Better get started. All aboard! Now in 1919, federal government bought the old railway, made it part of the Intercolonial, where it finished out its days. It ran for 22 more years till 1940 ran around. Then the Colby H and SM track and the old railway was shut down. Yes, the very first engine to run the track from Hampton to St. Martin's and back was a 4-4-wheeler with a funnel stack. Old Molly was her name. George Vaughan, conductor, he'd step outside, call the stops for the folks who'd ride. His clear, strong voice was George's pride, was his claim to fame. Well, now some folks swear to this very day, if you stand by the tracks down Hampton Way, and if it's really quiet, you can still hear George calling out from the platform, all aboard! Now leaving Hampton for Smithtown, Robertson, Salt Springs, Barnesville, Titus Mills, Upham, Tabor Bridge, Hampton Brook, Porter Road, Henry's Lake, St. Martin's. Want to reach Beach Street? Better get started. All aboard! With a clicking of her wheels and the clanging of her bell, the iron horse had a story to tell, the golden harvest from the prairie floor. Of BC timber and iron ore. All the smoke from her stack would blacken the sky, and they shovel the coal and the sparks would fly, and the scream of her whistle was a mournful wail. And her big wheels roll on the coal steel rail.